My panel now, everybody. Emily Tisch Sussman, host of your Political Playlist podcast, Democratic strategist and former vice president of campaigns for the Center for American Progress. Also, Tara Setmeyer, senior advisor for the Lincoln Project, former GOP communications director and resident scholar at the UVA Center for Politics. Welcome to you both, ladies. Thanks for joining us. Tara, let me start with you. And with that, I'm going to play off of a little bit of what we just heard from the congresswoman from Florida reacting to Lauren Boebert's comments, her Islamophobic comments towards Ilhan Omar. But with that, I want to couple it with sound that we heard earlier today from Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson on CNN this morning, reacting to Boebert's comments.
Do you think McCarthy should be publicly condemning this kind of behavior?
I do. I think whenever, even in our own caucus, our own members, if they go the wrong direction, I mean, it has to be called out. It has to be dealt with.
So Asa Hutchinson there saying, listen, it has to be dealt with, not with a lot of, I should say, not with a lot of enthusiasm in saying it, but he said it nonetheless. You heard McCarthy's statements yesterday, not even condemning Boebert's comments, instead saying, I had a conversation with her and she has since apologized. What do you make of it, Tara?
Kevin McCarthy is a political coward, and he's demonstrated that more than once. He demonstrated that he wasn't able to stand up to Donald Trump during his 4 years. He demonstrated that when he wasn't able to stand up to the big lie. He demonstrated that when he voted against certifying the duly elected election of Joe Biden after an armed insurrection just attacked the Capitol. He's demonstrated that when it was time to discipline not only Paul Gosar, we saw that disgusting display last week, but also when it came to disciplining Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is the de facto head of the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives. Now you have Lauren Boebert. How many times do we have to see these members of Congress disgrace their offices, act in this juvenile, very offensive, against everything conservatives were supposed to stand for, never mind what a decent human being would stand for. We've seen them do this over and over again, where all they do is go up there to Capitol Hill to raise money off of their performative politics, catering to a rabid base that seems to traffic in conspiracy theories, bigotry, racism, and this big lie about election fraud. Kevin McCarthy needs to grow a pair. I'm from Jersey. I'm happy to, let him borrow mine if I thought it was going to help him. OK, how many times? And he's doing all this for what, Yasmin? Because he thinks he's going to be Speaker of the House next year if the Republicans win. He is never going to sniff the gavel. And I've been saying this for a while. And the last stories over the last week have demonstrated that he is beholden to the radical right wing of the Republican Party, who is now the mainstream Republican Party. I stand with Adam Kinzinger when he calls Lauren Boebert trash, because that's exactly what she is, and that's exactly what she is doing to that office and to what she's doing in Congress. So, Kevin McCarthy, this is on you. How dare you? How shameful of you. You know better than this. And we're watching him debase himself every single day in fealty to Donald Trump and the Trump wing of the Republican Party, which now dominates it, and it will be for naught.
Emily, I don't know how you're going to follow up on that one, but I'm certainly going to give you the opportunity to do so. And with it, kind of expand on how do you combat the growing extremism, right? We saw with Gosar being censured, essentially a hand slap, right? So they could strip Boebert of her committee assignments, they could censure Boebert, but at the end of the day, there is still this growing extremism within the Republican Party. And I think got a lot of folks shaking their heads right now saying, how are you going to stop it? What do we do at this point?
No, absolutely. And I would just like to co-sign everything that Tanya just said. It really has become a party of performative politics to both get the approval of Donald Trump, because they are a party that is beholden exclusively to him as a personality, and of deep Reddit memes. It's basically how they trade on to raise themselves money to go. But that is actually exactly why Democrats have to be laser focused on passing policies, because there's really not a lot to be gained. Look, if you're into these Bogart deep Reddit memes, these are not voters that Democrats can actually pick up, not voters that Democrats had swayed to come over during the Joe Biden election in this past presidential election. Midterm elections are often a referendum on the party as a whole. So the more that these extreme Republicans are out there making offensive comments and then kind of apologize, and they obviously don't care. And we can see where McCarthy and the party leadership is. They're just barely a slap on the wrist. But Democrats have to be out and vocal and show that they are being effective. They are passing things like infrastructure, and they can pass things like Build Back Better. You know, we can take paid leave as the example. If Democrats don't keep paid leave, one of those popular pieces of the program in the legislation, they're just going to get drowned out by all this Republican noise. Yes, it's going to turn Republicans from the main screen off of the Republican Party, but they're not going to be energized to vote for Democrats. Democrats have to be laser focused on actually passing legislation.
So let's jump off of that, Tara, and run with it, right? Because there is a reality that Kevin McCarthy could be Speaker. There is a reality that Lauren Boeberts and Marjorie Taylor Greene could actually become in the majority come the midterm elections. And there is this idea, right, as Emily just laid out, that they really need to get as much legislation passed as possible in order to convince Americans to go cast ballots in favor of Democrats. They don't lose the House and the Senate. That being said, I had Molly Jong-Fast on yesterday on my show yesterday, and she talked about the fact that she doesn't think Americans are going to go vote because of legislation. If Democrats are just out there selling Build Back Better, talking about the fact that they passed infrastructure, Americans aren't necessarily going to be inspired to cast their votes in favor of Democrats. Instead, they need to jump on board with something else, maybe a common enemy, right? What do you make of that? Can legislation alone get Democrats across the finish line here?
No, and I've said prior to this, right after the November off-year elections, I said the Democrats cannot win next year bringing a policy pen to a political warfare fight. That's great. They do need to pass something, which is what they did with infrastructure, which should have happened 2 months prior, so that they had something strong and they didn't use their political capital all of those months through the November election trying to get something passed, looking like Keystone Cops on Capitol Hill, instead of in control and being the adults in the room. Now, going into the midterms, you don't think that Republicans are going to go out here and make a spectacle of themselves with the culture war, with critical race theory. They're not interested in actually governing. They're interested in, manufacturing outrage. So yes, the common enemy here for Democrats needs to be, do you want to go back to the 4 years of what Donald Trump did to this country? You voted him out of office, but Trumpism still exists. And now you have more and more people wrapping themselves in the malignancy of Trumpism and how dangerous that is to our way of life as Americans. If Democrats don't go hard after that and give people the contrast, it's America or Trumpism. They're going to lose next year.
Emily, final word to you.
Look, I believe that it's legislation and marketing. Like Democrats have to be able to talk about the fact that they could, of all the things that they've passed, have actually impacted people's lives. It can't just all be pushing back against Trump. It's not going to be enough.
Emily Tisch Sussman, Tara Setmeyer, thank you both, ladies. Great to see you on this Sunday. Appreciate it.